Hello, this is wmpyr here with something that I find very fascinating and interesting. Last time I talked to you guys about the Kung Fu instructor who basically said that the problem with Chinese martial arts today is that a lot of the people do not understand how to properly decode the forms, right? And because of that, he believes that within the next 5 years or so, Kung Fu will go extinct. So he's very, very worried, and this is his message. So he made a new video recently, and in this new video, he brought his instructor over to demonstrate the true meaning of the forms. And yeah, so he's trying really, really hard, to preserve and to save the face of Kung Fu. And, hey, my hat goes off to the guy. Anyway, what they demonstrated was Northern Fist. And to my surprise, but not really, part of the reason why it was surprising is that when you look at Northern Fist Kung Fu, and I have before, it it looks very athletic. It looks like there's a lot of jumping, kicking, and punching and long range. That's what it looks like. But when they decoded it, they said that the true meaning behind the form is not long range striking, but actually it is wrestling. So there were a lot of wrestling moves in there. And that was a little bit surprising for me because it looks like long range striking. But it wasn't that surprising because in karate there's very similar stuff where you're doing, this kind of stuff that looks like you're making a giant fireball, but it's actually some people decode that. They do the bunkai as a joint lock, joint manipulation technique. So it wasn't super surprising to me because that's very similar in a sense. But anyway, so when you watch people that do kung fu and they go up against the MMA fighter or they go up against the Muay Thai fighter, a lot of the kung fu people criticize those guys and say, "Where's the kung fu?" Because when they fight, you just see them kind of brawl. And brawling is basically very, very low skill boxing or kickboxing. That's what they're doing. And this instructor has said that if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Just don't call it kung fu. And why don't you go properly train in Muay Thai kickboxing or boxing? Why don't you go properly do that instead of what you're doing, which looks like a mess, which it is. And of course, they're going to lose against a professional Muay Thai fighter or against the MMA fighter because the MMA fighter in their training includes boxing and Muay Thai kickboxing. So of course they're going to lose to someone like that. So the interesting thing though is when like I said, this kung fu instructor, when they broke down the form for Northern Fist, it was wrestling, or that's what he said, it was wrestling. So then the natural question should be, and this is very interesting, is if I wanted to learn wrestling, why do I gotta go learn Northern Kung Fu? Where it's cryptic, I have to decode it properly, and if not, it's kind of useless to me if I decode it wrong. And there's always that worry of, is this the correct meaning behind this move or not, where I'm not sure, it's confusing. Why do I have to go do that? If I want to learn wrestling, why don't I just go learn wrestling? I could go do sambo, I could go do catch wrestling, I could go do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, judo. Those are a lot more straightforward. Why don't I go do that? And the reason behind this, no one asked him that. No one asked him that because he did say that about the striking. If you want to strike and if you want to basically do that, like boxing, kickboxing, why don't you go learn boxing, kickboxing? Don't do kung fu. That's what he said, in the previous video. So I'm saying kind of the same thing to him about the wrestling. If I want to learn wrestling, why don't I go do those other styles, those sports styles, instead of the kung fu, Northern Kung Fu, instead of go learn it that way? And the reason the reason, and he hasn't said this, and no one, I haven't seen anyone ask him this. I kind of want to ask him, but you know, I don't want there to be like how do you call it, a misinterpretation, and he thinks I'm being disrespectful or something like that. So that's why I'm keeping him anonymous as well, you know, because I don't think it's classy for another YouTuber to call out another YouTuber, you know. I want to see more collaborations between martial artists, but we're human, so there's a lot of sensitivity and jealousy and stuff like that, unfortunately, you know. So anyway, um, so in my opinion, the reason is because even though this guy said that what they're doing in Northern Fist is actually wrestling, it's not wrestling. It's not wrestling. So let me make that black and white clear. So I've said to you guys before that Eskrima in a nutshell is boxing. Well, I was wrong about that. I'm kind of wrong, but let me just say I'm wrong, okay? And I apologize if people misunderstood it. Long range Eskrima in a nutshell is boxing. That's what I meant back in the day, because there's also close range Eskrima, and that would be actually in a nutshell wrestling, okay? And when I say that, I'm still wrong, okay? Because long range Eskrima occurs within the area of boxing and kickboxing if you're empty-handed. And then close range Eskrima occurs within the area of wrestling. Okay, so that's what I mean. But actually, close range Eskrima is not wrestling, and long range Eskrima is not boxing, kickboxing. It's a little bit different. It's its own entity. It's its own genre. Okay, if I could make that clear. So this guy, what he showed in Northern Kung Fu is not wrestling. It's a little bit different. It's closer to wrestling, but it's not wrestling. And so this thing, this new thing that I'm trying to tell you guys, is very similar to boxing and wrestling, but it's not. So it's something totally new, and a lot of kung fu and like karate, Okinawan karate, because if you go into full contact karate, that's pretty much like kickboxing, you know. But Okinawan karate, and then same with Eskrima, this is its own thing. It's what I call the non-boxing wrestling. Hopefully I'll come up with a better name for it. But right now, let me just call it non-boxing, non-wrestling. And then over here we have the boxing and the wrestling, right? Yeah, it's a little bit different. So when I showed you guys the self-defense pattern, please watch those videos that I made recently. Self-defense pattern 1, 1.5, and then 2, I think I did. If you watch what I'm doing there, it's not exactly boxing, it's not exactly wrestling. So I hope you can see that. In fact, if you do some of those moves, you know, in boxing, you'll get thrown out. If you use it in kickboxing, those are illegal. They will throw you out. You'll never win a match that way either. They'll be like, "What the heck are you doing? You're supposed to box." So in the sport of boxing or in kickboxing, it's not cool to do. And same with the grappling stuff. It wouldn't in MMA. I don't think anyone's like specifically done it over and over and over, you know. But if they did, they would probably change the rules and say that's illegal. So, you know, it's just something to think about. So that's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.